DeerCast in general, you're looking at 70 to 80 years of Mark and Terry sitting in a stand, and really for each of them, the last 20 years specifically, where they really dialed in and went from being kind of a novice to, a guy that, I'm not going to say expert, but guys that sat there. Because of what we do, it allowed them to be in a tree every single day for 4 months. The entire season, they were in a tree every single day for 20 plus years. And they could kind of see, they're moving this time of night during this year. They started moving daylight. They started hitting scrape trees. Like, Mark and Terry, just really analytical people, and they started kind of connecting the dots, so to speak. And they don't have a PhD in, deer science or anything like that. They're not, that's not the profession, but they're just analytical guys. And so they started to put all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 261, DeerCast, Drury Outdoors, Hunt Tech Part 1. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Rackology. Everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslin Farm and Home storefronts, or online at www.rackology.org. Hunters Blend Coffee. Defending hunting one cup at a time. Finally, there's a coffee that helps rather than hurts your freedom to hunt. Use the code BBR to receive 10% off your next Hunters Blend order. Polar Works Coolers and the Chill Zone, specializing in the most durable, reliable thermal cups and coolers. Keep your drinks hot or cold in any element. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Morse's Sporting Goods, a full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Art Helen from Art Helen Outdoors, Dodgeville, Wisconsin. Get ready to listen to another amazing interview with the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Cameron Coble, the Average Joe Blue Collar Bow Hunter, and you're listening to my number one favorite podcast of all time, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, this is Cuz Strickland with Mossy Oak, and you're about to listen to the podcast that I listen to 16 and a half hours nonstop. The Big Buck Registry is the best out there.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to j@bigbuckregistry.com. In the first part of our 6-part series of Hunt Tech, where we explore the technology that has embedded itself in our hunting lives, we dive deep into a new hunting app called DeerCast by Drury Outdoors. For a very long time, deer hunters have been trying to determine when deer move, what conditions make for a worthy deer hunt, and when should we as deer hunters capitalize on those factors. We've spent hours and hours studying solunar charts, weather maps for pressure and cold fronts, and peak estrus diagrams for the areas that we hunt. It can be a daunting task to put it all together. The Drurys, Mark, Terry, Matt, and Taylor, have condensed all this information into one app for iOS and Android called DeerCast to determine the best times to hunt in your area during each phase of the Drury 13 phases of hunting. Will it be effective? Only time will tell. But undoubtedly technology in the deer hunting world, like it or not, is here to stay. So we thought we should explore in detail some of these tech advancements. Stay tuned for our next episode where we explore action cameras with the likes of Tactacam. We'll get to our entire interview with Matt Drury to talk about DeerCast. But before we do, let's hear from our friends at Rackology, Polarworks Coolers, and Jim Keller with the Deer News.
I still can't believe that's all you're taking.
I got everything I need all in one bag.
Rackology Deer Supplement and Attractant, developed through years of intense scientific research, comes a product that puts it all in one bag. Superior attractant, scientifically formulated vitamins and minerals, and all at a much better price. To get yours today, please check out rackology.org for a list of dealers. Rackology, how can you afford not to use it? Everything deer need, all in one bag.
I always wanted one of those high-end coolers because of the quality that I had heard of, but I couldn't justify the price. Then I found Polarworks. Finally, I found a company that understands quality and affordability. The Polarworks lineup is extensive and is filled with Polar Cups, Polar Tubs, and Polar Soft Coolers. So check out Polarworks.com when you're considering your next high-quality cooler without breaking the bank. That's www.polarwerkz.com.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, Wyoming hunting guide fatally mauled by grizzly bears. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Ryan Gatos. A Wyoming hunting guide was fatally mauled and his client was injured when a pair of grizzly bears attacked them Friday, officials said. Authorities later euthanized two grizzly bears, a mother and a cub, who wildlife managers believe killed guide Mark Upton and wounded his client Corey Chuban near the Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks border, according to USA Today. All available evidence indicates that these two bears were the bears involved in the Terrace Mountain attack, Wyoming Game and Fish Department spokesman Rebecca Fitzgerald said in a statement on Sunday. Upton and Chuban were attacked by bears as they field dressed the elk they had just shot Thursday, but were only able to find Friday, officials said. The bears aggressively charged the men and didn't touch the dead elk, Teton County officials said. The deadly incident came weeks after a federal judge halted Wyoming state officials' plan to hold a grizzly hunt this month, according to USA Today. The hunt was put on hold until October 1st. I can only imagine how horrific this was, Cy Gilliland, a hunting guide and spokesman for grizzly hunters in the area, told the newspaper. You've got a bear population that's basically unhunted, is an apex predator, and has no fear of humans. Upton was a father of 5, authorities said. A GoFundMe page was launched to help his family. I have been best friends with Sarah, Upton's wife, since the 2nd grade. We have done a lot of life together, Raleigh Perry, a family friend, wrote on the page. I know I can't take away the pain, but if we can help support Sarah to be able to focus on the kids and not worry about finances. Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner vetoes plan to study supplemental deer feeding. This story is from the U.S. News and World Report website. Governor Bruce Rauner has vetoed legislation that would permit experts to study the impact of supplemental feeding of wild deer. The Republican on Tuesday rejected the proposal by Republican Senator Chapin Rose for the University of Illinois Prairie Research Institute study. Hunters advocate supplemental feeding to ensure deer herds have proper nutrition during summer antler growing season and in winter when natural food sources are scarce. The study would determine the health effects of supplemental feeding on deer herds and whether it would spread communicable diseases. It would determine the locations where it might provide the most benefit. Rauner is a hunter but says that the study's scope should be better defined and make clear the involvement of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. Doutzen Crows, Kyle Richards, other celebrities slam female hunter for quote-unquote disgusting kill of large leopard. This story is from the Fox News website. A big game hunter is being criticized by celebrities on social media for her disgusting act of killing a leopard. An image of the unidentified woman, known only as Brittany, holding up the carcass of the large animal was shared on the Safari Club International website on September 7th for being a record kill. SCI is an Arizona-based organization that protects hunters' rights and promotes wildlife conservation, according to the website. The photo went viral after David Bonnevere, co-founder of A Knot in My Planet, an organization that works to end elephant ivory poaching, shared it on his Instagram account Friday. A very large male leopard recently killed by the woman identified as Brittany of the Safari Club International based in Tucson, Arizona. Call them and give them a piece of your mind, Bonavere wrote. His photo was shared by others on social media, including big-name celebrities like Naomi Campbell, Dotzen Crows, and Kyle Richards, expressing their disapproval of Brittany's hobby. How can you find pride and pleasure in killing a beautiful animal like this large male leopard? The woman in the picture should be ashamed of herself. I find this disgusting, and I'm so upset, sad, and angry that this still happens, Crows wrote. I know this is upsetting to see, but if we don't speak up, this will never stop, Richards wrote. This isn't the first time a hunter has been publicly shamed. Former NHL player Tim Brent received death threats and abusive comments online after sharing photos and boasting about a grizzly bear he hunted last week. Idaho man arrested on Elko County poaching charges. This story is from the Elko Daily Free Press website. An Idaho man was booked on $10,000 bail this month after an Operation Game Thief investigation determined that a deer was shot in Nevada and dragged across the state line into Utah, where his daughter had a tag. Mark T. Venkara, 43, of Buell, faces felony charges of unlawful killing and possessing a big game animal on October 22, 2017. People driving on Deans Pass Road near the state line reported seeing the hunting party dragging a large buck about 70 yards and through a fence, according to court documents. 2 days later, they reported the incident to the Nevada Department of Wildlife. A game warden photographed trail, hair, and blood evidence, as well as boot prints, and tracked down the vehicle from the photos taken by the witnesses. Zvenkara told officials his daughter had a tag out of Utah and had killed the deer in Nevada with a single 150-yard shot. It wasn't until after his daughter shot the buck and he went over a small hill to motion the others and the hunting party to come up the hill that he noticed the orange state line markers, the game warden stated after his December 12th interview with Svenkara. He did not have an answer when asked why he did not inform NDOW of the mistake, according to the warden. Svenkara showed officials the 3x3 buck's head, which was in an outbuilding at his residence. It was seized by Idaho Fish and Game investigators. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum for leads on some of the stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Matt Drury with DeerCast. Matt Drury, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, buddy. How are you today?
I'm doing well. There's a tone of Christmas in the air, and it tells me that it's time to go deer hunting.
It is. It's finally here, and, as we're recording this, it's the 24th, so that means October 1st is coming around, and pretty much the rest of the states' deer seasons are opening up, and I think it's on everybody's mind right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, Matt, last time I was just checking the records, and it does not seem like it's been over 4 years since you were last on the show, but it actually has. Last time you came on was June 14th, 2014.
We were probably promoting the new show 13 at that point, I bet.
You absolutely were. And I think you're in that phase of, what do we do about all these DVDs? And let's get into streaming a little bit.
Yeah.
And today, of course, we're talking about DeerCast, because that seems to be like the next evolution of how content's going to be delivered through apps.
It certainly is for us. And, there's a lot of solutions out there. There's a lot of content that can be, that can be tracked down online no matter where you go. The MOTVs of the world, the Carbon TV, and there's a billion of them, it seems like. And, of course, just about anybody and everybody's got a YouTube channel. So it's really great for the consumer at home, because there's so many places where you can get some really good content, no matter from who, your favorite hunter, the guy next door, or somebody as big as Lee and Tiffany or Waddell or Mark and Terry. You can get it anywhere you want to get it.
Right.
And that's the cool part. I mean, the only thing you really need is internet service. So
right.
I guess that's the only downfall.
Right. And sometimes in some parts of the world, that internet access is not so easy, even with the cell technology. But So then we got to cover all this stuff in this DeerCast app. It's fascinating. I've downloaded. I'm a subscriber. And in the pre-show chat, you mentioned you had so far, what was it, 76,000 downloads so far?
The 76,000 accounts registered. There's more downloads. Somebody would get it and get to the they might not want to register their email address or whatever, so they stop there. Yeah. But the conversion rate's been pretty high. I mean, most people, if they've downloaded it, they registered and set up an account, and that's all within less than a month. We launched on August 28th, and as we're filming here today, it's the September 24th. So within less than a month, we've hit 76,000. We should be, in the next 3 days here, we'll hit 80,000, and it's blowing us away. I mean, we hoped that it was going to be received well, and we put a lot of time and effort and of course money into this project.
Sure.
And it's been very nice to see people downloading it and not just downloading it, but actually having success with it. I mean, we're starting a whole new series over on YouTube called Bragging Board, DeerCast Bragging Board, because we're getting so many people that are saying, "Hey, I wasn't going to go hunting tonight. It said great, so I jumped in the stand. I killed the biggest deer of my life."
Right.
So I think it's not going to kill a deer for you, but what it will do is it might give you that last push to say, you know what, I should go, or you know what, it's supposed to be bad. I'm not going to waste my time. And if there is such a thing, any time spent in the woods is not a waste of time. But in today's day and age, people get so busy. You got young kids, you got sports and activities and all the things that you got to do. Sometimes you just want to know, you know what, are the odds in my favor? And I think this helps.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's start breaking it down, and let's back up a ways. You mentioned the 13 phases that you guys have put out, and believe me, the Drury name means an awful lot to an awful lot of hunters. You have a very well respected background, and it seems like you're always out to teach us stuff. So before we get into the DeerCast app, it's all based off of the 13 phases, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yes, sir.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the phases that we've experienced already. The one we're starting tomorrow, and then maybe the following after that, and then if everybody wants to find out more about the phases, they can go onto your website or they download the app and follow, because it looks like it's literally telling you. Because I downloaded this thing already, and I've gone through phase 1, went through all the videos, checked the likelihood, or if it's a good day or a bad day based off of all the weather. But I want to break all that down as to how we're supposed to read all this stuff. So let's talk about the phases first. You've got 13 of them. What is phase number 1, and when does that occur?
So we call phase 1 a new beginning, and it's roughly, and you got to take this a little bit with a grain of salt, because most of it's based off of the Midwest, the areas that we're hunting. But, and we'll get into this in a little bit with the app, the scale can slide, so to speak. Either you're down south or you're northeast or wherever.
Right.
You can slide the scale to fit your area just based on peak estrus, and we'll get into that when we talk about that. But we're in the new beginning right now, kind of September 15th to the 24th. You're paying attention to your thermals, and you're trying to manage your herd. You're shooting does if your herd's out of balance. You're reviewing, your summer trail camera pictures and seeing if you got a deer that, a shooter that you're on, your summer trail camera pictures. This period, you still have a chance to get him in his summer pattern, before he kind of just moves to a whole different area. You're seldom hunting in the mornings. When we talk about the phases, we're really talking about how to best get on a shooter. What would make a mature whitetail buck move during daylight hours? Now, plenty of people have had success, obviously, in the first phase and shot a good buck. But usually that means you're on it. You know from your camera pictures, you knew where he was going from food to bed or whatever. It's very rare. So usually we say seldom hunt mornings because you can do more harm than good. You want to be mindful of your farm's DNA. Is it a good early season spot, or does it really only pick up once the rut kicks in? So those are some of the things that we look at in this first phase.
Okay. So based off of the phase, I'm reading off your website, it's saying that phase 1 is, generally speaking, and I say generally because you just prefaced that, September 15th through the 24th. And the tactics that you employ here are, and I'm just going to read these and you can maybe touch on a little bit more about what these mean. Pay attention to your thermals, manage your does, review recent summer trail cam pictures, seldom hunt in the mornings, and be mindful of your farm's DNA. Let's talk about number 1 there. Pay attention to your thermals. Why is that important at this phase?
This time of year, you know, if you're hunting in the evenings, your thermals, you might have the right wind. Say you're hunting a spot and you needed a north wind far. Front came in, you're sitting there, you needed a north wind far, and you're on top of a ridge. And your wind's right, but in the evenings as the sun starts to drop, your thermals, the Earth's thermals automatically kind of pull down. And as the sun starts going down and the cooler temperatures kind of are setting in, that your actual scent, as much as you might try to be scent free, it's nearly impossible. It's naturally being pulled down and kind of dragged down the hill. And so you got to be really mindful of your thermals and making sure that, you know, you might be like, hey, I got a north wind. Why is this doe out in front of me kind of, you know, throwing her head up and down doing the bob and weave? Well, she might be getting your thermals. It happened to me this past weekend, actually, up at Dad's place. So it just, you gotta be real mindful of those types of things, big time in the early season, because it seems to be a little more, you know, at the end of the evening, a lot of times wind kind of dies down to nothing, and you've been out there and it's so quiet and still, it's almost spooky, and that's when thermals really can get you, because they're dragging your scent down, no doubt.
Yeah.
And they're dragging them to where the deer were bedded or coming from. You might have some issues.
And I think what you're getting at is that there are, at this time of year, you can still have really warm days that cool down to cool evenings, and there's a big variation in temperature drop, which in thermals go up and down, right? And they carry scent. Right. That doesn't happen mid-November as much because there's a more constant temperature going on.
Exactly. Yeah, you might, have a 75-degree high that day, and it drops down to the mid-40s, which is what we were having, this past weekend in Missouri, and that's a big, big drop, and that's what we want as a deer hunter early season. That gets deer up on their feet, but you also got to really watch what it does to your thermal.
Right. Okay. Manage your does. What does that mean?
Well, this time of year, especially if you aren't on a shooter, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of set your fringe spots on your farm and try to manage your deer herd. If they're born at a 1-to-1 ratio, most deer herds, you might be lucky if it's 10-to-1 does to bucks or whatever. You got to try to take this opportunity when you might not be on a shooter to try to manage your doe herd, your herd in general, but manage the does and go out there. And it does a couple things. Not only does it try to balance that herd out, puts meat in the freezer, and it kind of knocks the cobwebs off of you a little bit, gets those nerves out of you, and it allows you to kind of get the practice in for when maybe the time comes and the real deal hits. Gotcha.
Okay. Now, when we talk about review recent summer trail cam pictures.
Well, this point, you're wanting to make sure if you got a shooter, your trail camera is going to tell the story, right? So if he's walking daylight at this time of year, leading right into the early season, you better be ready and in a spot and kind of got your game plan if you're getting them daylight somewhere. So that's what that means. I mean, it's telling you, use MRI, most recent information, to the best of your ability there. Okay. And if you're not getting pictures, if they're nocturnal, don't go in and blow your spots. You may do more damage than good.
Okay. Now, the fourth one here in the new beginning phase, seldom hunt in the mornings. I've heard this a bunch, especially early season. What is that all about? What does that mean?
It's kind of the same principle as when you're reviewing your pictures, because if you're going in there and you're hunting your morning spots, and traditionally there, you're looking for the deer herd to go back from food. They're out eating all night and going back to their bedroom. you're going in there, you're putting your scent all over the place. I mean, realistically, you don't want to start hunting mornings unless you're on top of one, unless you know you're on one. You really don't want to start hunting your morning spots until, late-ish October, when you know that the big bucks are up on their feet in the mornings. They're still cruising. They're looking for does, or starting to anyways. Like, you just don't want to kind of waste your spots and waste your time, more importantly. So seldom, in the early season, we just seldom, if ever, hunt in the mornings. Even when a DeerCast might say great, we still very rarely hunt in the mornings.
Gotcha. Okay. Part 5, the fifth tactic of phase number 1, again, which goes from the 15th to the 24th, and with an asterisk next to that based off of where you live. Be mindful of your farm's DNA. Now, understand that not everybody has a farm, but what does that mean to people who do hunt farms and people that hunt just general areas but don't have farms?
Yeah, so being mindful of your, let's just say, your hunting area's DNA. Like, early season traditionally, say for instance, Mark's farm in North Missouri is really, really good. Typically, he's got good daylight activity. They get shooters up on their feet and moving. And Dad, it's not. There's a lot of ag around Terry's farm, and the deer just aren't really living on them yet. So you just got to realize, like, set your expectations correctly. Like, if your farm just doesn't hold deer in the early season, maybe that's an opportunity to try to harvest those. Maybe it's an opportunity to stay out of there and not screw up your spots. I mean, you just got to understand what your deer herd's like, what the DNA of your farm is, and act appropriately. So, like, for instance, my lease, I know I've hunted it 5 years now, and I can pretty much tell you I'll still go when the fronts hit, but I can pretty much tell you it's not going to be really good until the first week of November. It's always the same way. And so if my plan is to go in there, unless I'm just on top of one and he's walking daylight, which is rare on my place early season, I may just be wasting my time a little bit, other than the fact that I want to get out there and kind of see the observed movement for myself and see where the herd is coming out of, and making sure that everything's set and ready for when the good time of year does hit.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's move on to phase number 2. Green pastures is what I believe is entitled. Usually represents September 25th-ish to the October 12th-ish.
Yeah, so
go ahead. Sorry.
This time of year, that's when the deer, usually, especially in the areas where you might have a lot of beans, farmers around you have a ton of beans out there. They're starting to turn yellow, so that food source that they were hitting, that green food source, is now turning yellow. So having a green food source like a, biologic maxima or clover or whatever, some green food source that you've planted on your place or in your little hidey-hole food plots, that's when they start becoming really, really palatable. And that just also coincides with the fact that all those beans are starting to turn yellow, and that's not something that the deer are wanting at that time. So they're searching your green food source out. It's becoming palatable. It's about the same time that the beans are turning yellow. And if you got a green food source around that time frame, you're going to be sitting pretty.
Okay. So tactics that you've discussed or have listed in phase number 2: plant to your position and plant to optimize palatability. Does that coincide with what you just mentioned there?
It does, because, the plant to your position is a little outside of what I was talking about, but the plant to optimize palatability is definitely what I'm talking about. Because, if you figure, Mark always talks about, he likes to get his green food source in the ground about 45 days before the first frost, because that's when, it really starts kind of really greening up this time of year, and then the first frost really kind of takes it to a whole nother level. But anyways, when you're going to plant to your position, that's more or less saying, you know what, I know that the deer are always kind of in this area. They always come out of this. Maybe it's this corner. They come out of their bedroom and come into this corner, and I never had a food source there. Or maybe it's that you want to put one there, but you also got to realize your access in. So you want to make sure your access is good, because if they see you coming in or smell you, your trail coming in or whatever the case may be, you might have blown everything. So you want to plant to your position. So you want them to come to you. You want to have the access that you need to make sure you can slip in and slip out without being detected.
Okay. All right. Check your trail cameras frequently. That's tactic number 3 as part of phase number 2, green pastures. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's just pretty self-explanatory. In the summer, in the early season, we stay out of our places pretty much. It might be 2-3 weeks until we go in and check your trail cameras. Well, this time of year, you want to start looking at them a little more often because you might start seeing some daylight walkers and some mature deer that are starting to hit their feet during the daylight to get to those green food sources. So you want to know that you're on top of them, and when they do start walking daylight, you want to be able to jump in your spot and react appropriately.
Okay. Scout more than you hunt. This is an interesting one. Part 4 of the tactics of the second phase. I mean, that's a brilliant statement. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Well, it kind of goes with checking your trail cameras more frequently. That's the scouting. And you want to be, if you have the type of terrain that you can kind of sit from afar and be watching and scouting in the evenings and seeing what they're doing, that's great too. But you want the best information you can. This isn't going to be a time of year where you're necessarily overly successful, but if you're doing your scouting and your trail cameras are kind of showing you that the deer are starting to walk daylight, that's when you can then say, you know what, I need to make a move. I need to get in there.
Okay. And then number 5, minimize intrusion, access, and scent. So kind of self-explanatory there as well, but how do you go about that? How do you minimize your intrusion?
Kind of goes back to scout more than you hunt, but, you kind of watch from afar the best you can.
Okay. When
you're checking your trail cameras, that's when you want to really watch your access and scent. You really want to try to get in there. A lot of times if you can access it via a vehicle, a four-wheeler, or a golf cart or a truck or whatever, sometimes that's your best bet. Do it midday when they're not, you realize they're really probably not moving because they're moving early morning and late evening. Go midday when they're all bedded. And by going in, if you can, with a vehicle of some sort, or side-by-side or quad, it allows you to minimize your scent as well. Plus that noise, leave it running while you go and check your stuff. It just kind of helps cover what you're doing in there.
Okay. And then phase 3, this is, and I love the title of this one, October Lull, a classic. And a topic for discussion, and two sides of that coin for sure. Phase 3, October 13th-ish to October 24th-ish. What's the October lull?
This is typically the time of year for, and you'd have to get Mark and Terry on to really explain what is happening during the lull, but where we just really historically don't see much activity of any kind, bucks, does, anything. They're just not up on their feet, moving as much during this period. So unless the moon's right and you got cold temperatures, this period can be really tough to have any success in. That being said, we've definitely seen some big deer die during this period, but usually it's because the moon is right.
Okay. Tactic number 1 of phase 3, don't waste any time. What time would we be wasting at this point?
Your valuable time. If you're going in and hunting during this period, like I said, this year I think it's going to be different because I think the 20th to the 24th is actually going to be very good. Granted, the weather's good and we have a cool front coming through, but the moon is going to be working towards getting full during that period, so it should be really good actually.
Okay.
But that being said, like, you don't want to go out there and say you're burning vacation days or you're burning you're just your wife's goodwill at home that you're gone so much. Like, don't waste your time during this period if they're, historically they're not moving. They're just not up and about. That being said, this year I think is going to be a little bit different. So you do want to pay attention to that last part of this phase. It could be very, very good.
Okay. Number 2 of phase 3, avoid hunting your best spots. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Why should I avoid my best spots?
Well, so it depends on the area you're at. If you only got 1 or 2 spots, you may not be able to avoid them. But it goes back to kind of some of the general tactics we've already touched on. You don't want to blow out your spot before the time of year is right. So you're getting really close here to the end of October, early November, when it's going to get really, really good. Well, if you're going in there every evening, every morning, and you're hunting, you're setting your scent trail back and forth every time you get to your stand, maybe a doe, blue, maybe she caught you moving in the stand. Like, you just have opportunities where you can only do more harm than good. And this is a phase where that's amplified because you're getting so close to the time of year where it's going to be very good. So you don't want to blow it out and kind of ruin your spot before the good time of year happens.
Okay. All right. Number 3 of phase 3, transition cameras to scrapes. I think I know what this means. Sounds like you're not paying attention to cameras as much, but you're looking at some other indicators.
Well, this is the time of year where scrapes become really important, and usually you'll have some new that pop up, but a lot of times you might have a traditional area that they scrape every year, a big hub scrape, and so this is the time of year where you want to put your cameras on them, because here in the next week to 10 days, they're going to start hitting the scrapes more than they normally would. They're starting to kind of get the jiggy with it, get that feeling out there that they're getting ready to, the rut's getting ready to start hitting, so they're wanting to find that first available doe. They want to get kind of their scent out there and let all the other bucks know that, hey, this is my territory. And you might have one scrape site that every single buck on the entire farm hits. So you want to have your trail camera on that scrape site, because you will get deer that you may not have gotten, all season so far.
Right. Okay. And then you've got strike on major weather fronts. That one gets me excited, typically speaking. So that you're saying that phase 3, this is really important.
Yeah, I mean, every phase of the entire year, it's important, but this phase, I think, can really amplify it. And so, if you got a cool front coming in and a big temperature drop and high barometric pressure, and there's a few things that, make deer get up on their feet and move, and that's kind of why we made DeerCast, to try to put all those things into one algorithm and pump out a prediction. Well, this is the time of year where it really becomes amplified. And if you got a big temperature drop coming through, you need to plan on being out in the woods for that evening's hunt.
Okay. And then finally, weather trumps moon, the 5th part of phase 3. Now, that's an incredible statement as well, and I wanted to get a little bit more into what this means. But what does that mean in general?
Yeah, so in general, the moon phase, a lot of people put a lot of stock in what the moon's doing, and rightfully so. But for us, it's just one of 11 different weather conditions that we think about, and it's not even that high up on the list. Now, this time of year, like I said, like the 20th to the 24th this year, that moon, it's going to be starting to, get towards the full moon. And if the weather is cool during that same 5 days before the full moon, the hunting is going to be incredible in the evenings, in the afternoons, But if the weather's super hot, it doesn't matter what the moon's doing. It's not going to be great. The hunting's just not going to be as good, because a lot of it might be, a lot of the movement and that type of thing might be happening during the evening when you're, during nighttime when you're not out there. So weather always trumps moon. If it's warm, it doesn't matter if it's the 5 days leading into the full moon. It's not going to be as good as it could be. Okay.
All right. Very, very good. So those are 3 of the phases of the 13. I'm not going to go through all phases, but if people listening to this want to get this, or the 13 phases, it's right on your website. It's pretty prominent, all right? And it's all broken down right there on DruryOutdoors.com.
Yep, you go to DruryOutdoors.com and you go up to the television spot up top and hit 13, and then there's a drop-down. It says Cast Bios, Episode Guide, Phase Breakdowns.
Okay.
Hit the Phase Breakdowns and you'll be good to go.
All right, so let's get into the app. From these phases, you developed this app. Now, why develop an app?
Well, for us, we feel like it's our future. We feel like we want to have a little bit more control as to where our consumer can get our content and what the content is. And, with social media, you don't know if they decide, hey, tomorrow we don't agree with hunting anymore. We don't think that killing animals is the message we want on our platforms. Just because we have 1.5 million subscribers across all of our social channels doesn't mean that we have the right to send the message we want to them. That you're using someone else's platform. You agree to those terms when you jump on it and sign up for an account. So who's to say they don't turn it off tomorrow? Well, we want to be prepared. We want to have the ability to have the control of our future. And we feel like this is a place where anybody that loves whitetail hunting, turkey hunting, any hunting, this is a safe spot for you, man. You can go there, and we're giving tips and tactics and updates and really more access to Drury Outdoors than we've ever given in our entire 30-year history of our company. It's everything right here. You could see the kills as they happen this fall. We put them up within, in some instances, within a few hours of when we killed the deer. The footage is going up here kind of in a raw farm, but you're able to go and get that immediate gratification and see what Mark just killed. He killed one last week, and within hours we had the footage of it up on the app. Pretty cool. That almost makes you feel like you're there. And to have a place where all of our content, most of our content, I shouldn't say all, because our TV shows, our Outdoor Channel and TV shows are still on MOTV, which is the Outdoor Sportsman's Group's, it's their app, and we release our content to them, our TV shows. But all the rest of our stuff is on this app in our DoD TV section. And we have our entire 30 years of videos, VHS, DVDs, that's all on their catalog. Moss Yoke's got a bunch of content on there. Like, it's a really cool place for you to go get this DeerCast prediction of your area, and then also just while you're there, stay and enjoy a bunch of free content.
Right. Gotcha. You just mentioned something very interesting there, is that, and this was a question I had. I've been asking people if they've tried out the DeerCast app, because it seems pretty cool. And I saw, a flash come across Facebook or something, like DeerCast, they've come out with something good. Because I think when we interview you guys and your uncle, your dad, and you and your sister, and we're always wondering about the breakdown of the phases. How did you develop that? What went into all these things? And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like 30 plus years, maybe 60 plus years if you combine everybody's, or maybe more than that, if you combine everybody's experience and observations of what happens at certain times of the year and try to put them in some kind of category that can be used usefully for the hunter. But in this case, in any part of the country, wherever you live, these principles still apply.
Generally speaking, we believe so, and we've tested it out last year with our entire team, 50 plus people across the country in all kinds of different areas. And they're not all hunting places like Mark's or Terry's, it's leases and, public areas and what have you. So we felt pretty confident because the success rate of the prediction was 85, 90%. And we keep tweaking the algorithm, but so, this DeerCast in general, you're looking at 70 to 80 years of Mark and Terry sitting in a stand, and really for each of them, the last 20 years specifically, where they really dialed in and went from being kind of a novice to, a guy that, I'm not going to say expert, but guys that sat there because of what we do, it allowed them to be in a tree every single day for 4 months. The entire season, they were in a tree every single day for 20 plus years.
Right.
Both of them.
Right.
And so they're just very analytical guys, and especially once trail cameras hit and they could kind of see, okay, they're moving this time of night during this year. They started moving daylight. They started hitting scrape trees. Like, Mark and Terry, just really analytical people. And they started kind of putting connecting the dots, so to speak. And so all of that observed movement, and they don't have a PhD in, deer science or anything like that. They're not, that's not their profession, but they're just analytical guys. And so they started to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And every year, every fall, whether it's our team members or whether it's people sending us emails to our website or now social media, leaving us messages, it's always like, hey, I got to pick out my vacation. What would Mark and Terry do? Or, hey, I got this big deer I'm on. I just cannot get, get them in bow range. What should I do? Well, this app kind of puts all their knowledge into one place. We created this algorithm with an app developer, and actually the lead coder of this app team, he's a pilot in his free time, and weather obviously is a huge factor for pilots.
Right.
And in our opinion, these 11 conditions, most of them or all of them, weather variables, we felt like that we kind of cracked the code, so to speak. Like, okay, this phase, if we get these conditions, we feel like deer should be up on their feet. Are they, it's going to be a bad day, or, we don't know what your farms are like. We don't know what the pressure around your farm is like, or your access in, or we can't predict those kind of things. But we feel like, generally speaking, based on the weather conditions, we know when they should move, and we have cracked that code. And so we built this algorithm phase by phase, and these different conditions. We weighted them differently each phase because in phase 1, cloud cover is different than it is in phase 13. Barometric pressure, the level it needs to be at in phase 1 is different than 13 and all the way through all those 13. So we basically built this algorithm that will pump out a forecast, a DeerCast, thus the name. So with that, we just break it down into 5 levels, which we've kind of gone back and forth on this, but it's like, when we're talking to each other at the end of a night, it's like, hey, how was the movement for you? It was okay. It was good. It was great. It was a bad night. So we kind of broke it down to that simplistic style or chart. So great, good, okay, poor, bad. Those are the 5. And we had 5 last year when we beta tested it. We ended up taking okay out for the launch and just had the 4. But then we quickly realized we were really missing okay because there were so many nights where it was giving us a good reading, and it was like, it's not really good, though. It was just okay. Or it was giving us a poor reading, and it's like, it wasn't that bad. So we were missing that small little kind of middle ground. And so we added that back in, or adding it back in here in the next couple days. So anyways, that's kind of the breakdown of the forecast itself, the DeerCast, and the thought process behind it.
Okay. So you had some tech help. It sounds like you put together all the knowledge and a pilot that understands weather. That seems crucial here. So as I'm opening the app, now this is something that I've tested on my iPhone 6. I've tested on an iPad mini that is dated back 4 or 5 years. And I was able to download those apps onto those devices. These are older devices, so anybody who has these older devices, it sounds like this app under the iPhone or Apple type style can download them onto older devices and in addition to newer devices, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, and it's also available over on Android. I think Android, like version 4.4 or older, it does not work on. But anything newer than that, I think they're on version 9 or 10 or something. It does work. So we kind of found that out through trial and error in that first week. But anyways, it does. It works, generally speaking, pretty good on any smartphone. And of course, you got to have good service for it to download, and just like any app. But by and large, it should work well for you. iPads, tablets. The only thing it really probably doesn't, it's not made for a desktop computer, laptop, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. So opening up the app, it sounds like it's available in Android versions and on Apple devices, but not on computers.
Correct.
Okay. Opening up the app, and I want to break this down a little bit so that people understand what it is they're going to see when they download it, is that you've got, 3 or 4 pages that you can go to. But on the first page, it gives you the forecast for your area. And again, this is very weather oriented. It's not a mapping device, right? Like this isn't like
not yet.
Okay. I see where you're going. So it's not going to it's not going to map your stands or all that stuff yet, but right now it's focused on weather.
Correct.
But I also don't see a lot of moon predictions here. Is there any?
No.
There's no moon type factors plugged into this.
Well, there are. The moon is one of 11 conditions, weather variables that we factor in. But like I said earlier, it's not up. It's not high on the list.
Right.
Now, when you first go to the app and open it up, and that first, what we call our feed or news feed, it's up top. So it's a snapshot of whatever your, you could set your farm location or farm locations, our current area. Those are the different things that you can set up in your settings as far as, you go to your settings and then go to locations and you can set those things. So once you do that, it gives you a weather forecast, like a snapshot, so to speak, at the top of the feed. So it tells you what city and state that you've set for your location.
Yep.
And then it gives you 5 a 5-day forecast up top, okay?
Yep.
And with that 5-day forecast, and we're using Weather Channel's API, which means all this data is coming from the Weather Channel. So it's as accurate as you can get. So what you see is the high, the low, and the average high for that day in your area, because that's important. That's important. That's one thing that we look at a lot, is the average high. As far as the sun, sunrise, sunset, and the same with the moon, the time of the day that the moon comes up and sets, and generally speaking, like it's today's full moon, so it's showing that. And then precip, what percentage of precipitation that your area is going to get that day.
Yep.
What the high for the pressure would be, and what the wind speed, general wind speed and direction that the wind's going to be for that day.
Okay.
And then underneath that, it gives you, it says phase 1, like today we're still in phase 1, tomorrow for my area, it's saying phase 2. So we're jumping into a different phase tomorrow. But today it says phase 1, AM pour for my DeerCast, and PM pour. So today's a crappy day to go hunting. So it gives you a snapshot, 5-day snapshot. And if you clicked on any one of those days, it would take you to the DeerCast, like the detailed view of it. So I click, say, Wednesday, it's saying great. So I click that and jumps over to the DeerCast section, which is like the little hoof print icon at the bottom. And it goes to that daily summary. And all of a sudden you can see all these videos. It says Understanding Your DeerCast. And what that is it's Mark and Terry breaking down every single day, every single condition of that phase. They're breaking it down with a video, trying to help you understand why the prediction is what it is. And that's important to us, because we wanted to help teach people, like, we're not trying to keep any secret sauce here. I mean, we're trying to help you become a better hunter and be able to do this stuff on your own. And so it gives you a very detailed phase breakdown, tactic breakdown video, and then underneath that, every single condition, it'll tell you time of day, phase 2, precipitation, phase 2, barometric pressure, phase 2, all those things. It goes into that phase and why deer do what they do because of that weather condition for that phase.
Let's take a coffee break and hear from our friends at Rackology and Hunter's Blend Coffee. And when we come back, we'll pick up where we left off with Matt Drury talking about DeerCast.
I still can't believe that's all you're taking.
I got everything I need all in one bag.
Rackology Deer Supplement and Attractant, developed through years of intense scientific research, comes a product that puts it all in one bag. Superior attractant, scientifically formulated vitamins and minerals, and all at a much better price. To get yours today, please check out rackology.org for a list of dealers. Rackology, how can you afford not to use it? Everything deer need, all in one bag.
Hunter-friendly coffee retailers are great, but ever wonder where they buy it from? Now there's a company that imports directly from farmers, zero middlemen, roasts it, and ships it right to your door. From the farmer's fields to your morning cup, Hunter's Blend Coffee has been in the hands of hunters. Through their giving, your coffee supports the RMEF, Whitetails Unlimited, and Women's Hunting Associations, and many others. Now you can defend hunting one cup at a time. Not bad for a cup of coffee. And did I mention, it is so good. And now back to our conversation with Matt Drury discussing the new app, DeerCast. So I'm looking at my app, right? And I'm in New Hampshire, and it's saying as of the day of this recording today, low of 42, high of 58. Looks like a sunny day, average of 67 degrees, so we're well below the average. Sunrise, sunset says zero precipitation, pressure of 30.51, which I know will get you guys excited, right? That's pretty darn high. Right. So, and that's
really high,
super high. And that's like the pressures that you think are, and that I've always heard the Drury say, man, anything north of like 30.2 is like time to hunt.
So what's the prediction?
So, it has a wind. It says great evening and morning and evening, both great.
Yep.
So,
I mean, that's right. You're below average temperature. There's a lot of other factors, but
right.
The basic ones, the main ones, I should say, are in that snapshot, and all yours are lining up to be great.
Right.
So,
right. Which is different than you're in Missouri, so this is different.
Yeah. I mean, mine's as poor as it can be. I'm above average high. My pressure's not great. It's going to rain. there's a lot of factors. Cloud cover, there's a lot of factors, but by and large, it's not great. It's poor, actually.
This is a good illustration that when I asked a bunch of my friends, have you downloaded it? And they responded and said, well, is it good for my area? Well, here you go. I'm in New Hampshire. I'm getting a great, and you're getting a poor.
So let me ask you, did you change your peak estrus? You're in New Hampshire, you said?
New Hampshire, yep.
So did you go into your settings and change your peak estrus date?
No, I did not. Let me. I didn't even know that was an option. Let me do that here.
Yeah. So if you clicked on at the very top in the main page where it says New Hampshire, Missouri, or New Hampshire, sorry, whatever the city was, you click on that, it'll take you to your location, and then there's 3 little dots that all mine are set at peak estrus auto.
Okay.
And which for the Midwest is November 14th, and no matter what area you're in, we have set a peak estrus for your general area already.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it's 100% dialed in. So like New Hampshire, we were going off of some homework we did obviously last year to find these dates. So for you, if you're saying, you know what, if you clicked on the date, I don't know what the date is telling you it was, but if you clicked on the date, like in the Midwest, it would be November 14th is what it's automatically set at.
Okay.
I have mine set at automatic.
Mine is peak. Okay, I see where I've clicked through the dots, and it does say New Hampshire peak estrus is an auto. So I need to check there.
Yeah. So unclick auto, and then what's the date it's giving you?
November 13th.
Yeah. So do you know, is that your peak estrus? I mean, for you, you would have to, and you might have to do a little homework, talk to a game warden or your buddies. And peak estrus is the date where you feel like in the fall that the majority of the bucks are locked down with a doe. That's lockdown phase.
Now, I have, actually, now that you mentioned that, I have researched this for New Hampshire, and it's pretty close. Historically, the biologists say that November 20th is peak rut around here.
Okay.
So
change that date to be November 20th.
Okay.
And that will slide the scale.
This is a good exercise. Okay. Okay, so you can actually change the date there. Got it. Save.
And there's a little bug there that we're working on right now. So I went and did mine when we were talking about it, and I manually put in November 15th, and when you save it and go back out to the set locations, It says November 14th. For some reason, it's always saying on my iPhone 10, it's always saying the day before the day you actually set. I'm not sure why, and we're working on that right now to try to fix that. It's one of those little quirks that you find out once you launch it. But anyway, so now that should have slid your entire phase dates appropriately one direction, to the right, basically.
It did, because it was reading phase 2. Now it's reading phase 1.
Yeah, you should be based on that peak estrus date. You're going to be in phase 1 for a few more days, whereas tomorrow I move into phase 2 here in the Midwest.
Right. And I was in phase 2 there for a little bit. Now it's saying I'm going to be in phase 1 all week, and it's changed my rating for tomorrow's hunting from great to good.
Yeah, and because it's factoring in all those different items. Right. You know what I mean? It's factoring in all the tactics and the conditions, and so that's the beauty of the algorithm. It's thinking through all that for you.
Okay, so I'm looking at I'm in phase 1 here. And it's looking. If I turn the page and I go to the hourly details, it looks like it goes out 3 or 4 days, maybe even on the hourly details.
It's 5 days currently, and we're working on an update here too. So we're working on right now. All you could do is slide the little scale across every day and get the specific data for every hour, and it has the pressure, precip, cloud cover, temp, wind speed, average temperature or average high, those things you can see on the scale. Well, we're changing that a little bit so that instead of just having the 5-day ability, you can actually zoom into where the whole screen, that whole size of the screen is, you can go down to a 1 day as well. So you can really dive into the hour by hour, which is key. I mean, we had it that way in the beta testing, and we kind of took it out, and then after not having it in there, we miss it. We feel like you really want it back in there. So we're going to have an update here soon where you then can dive into this every day and have the full screen hour by hour. So it'll be a 1-day, 5-day, and then we also had a 10-day last year in the beta testing. And what we realized is, this thing's only as accurate as your weather data. Well, what weather is accurate 10 days out? None of it. And so the predictions were really wanky. I mean, it really just wasn't working 10 days out. It's really about 3 days out, it's the most accurate. 5 days is you're starting to stretch it a little bit.
Yep.
So what we found, though, is that we're missing, just generally speaking, trying to look at the weather and where it's going for the 10-day outlook. So I think we're going to work on adding a 10-day, but the first 5 days gives you a DeerCast. The second 5 days is just going to be weather, so you can generally say, okay, it's supposed to be a cool front coming in.
Right, and the weather can change on a dime, especially this time of year, so you can't predict that as well, that far out. So if I'm looking at my DeerCast hourly movement, I've got these solid green bars, which means great, right? Solid green.
Yep.
Then tomorrow it gets a little more narrow, still solid green. Then it gets into this pale green by the 26th. Good. So that's a good reading. Down to an orange.
Which is poor.
Poor. And then there, around the 27th, there's some reds showing up.
That's bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you go down one step and you've got the barometer readings. And and it looks like it shows you cloud cover, what percentage is coming in for the day. You've got the barometer reading, you can see the sliding scale, and then it looks like precipitation predictions are in the graph as well, so you can see when some weather might be coming in or rain. Mm-hmm. Skip down another bar, you got the temperature variations. You got the average temperature, which I assume is an average for the area for this time of year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That day, for that exact day.
For that exact day. Then you've got the variations of what the weather will do that day, peak and low. And this is interesting. You've got the wind and you've got the directions coming in. So it predicts the speed of the wind and it predicts the direction of the wind coming in from the north, south, whatever. So you can see how this is going to play out.
Yeah, and like I said, all that weather data is coming from Weather Channel, so it's as accurate as I think you can get.
Right.
And we look at 3 or 4 different weather sources, but we used to look at Wonderground as the most accurate, but IBM, which owns Weather Channel, bought out Wonderground this past year, so they now own the Wonderground's weather API. So It's all kind of the same. But all that being said, so the weather data isn't any special something that we created. We're pulling it from the cloud, the servers, the databases of the people that specialize in it.
Right. And
we just put it in a way that means the most to a whitetail hunter.
That's what I was just going to say. He said, yes, all this information's out there already, but you've put it in a format that a deer hunter can understand. And this was the same stuff. Like whenever I had a question, I spent hours trying to understand how you guys went and predicted barometer things. And I had 5 or 6 apps online trying to figure, what's the best predictor of when this thing's coming in. It was taking me a lot, and thank God you guys built this thing, because it took me a lot to go from one spot to the next to figure that out, and now it's all here.
What would literally take us hours of looking and finding, trying to find the average high someplace, trying to find the barometric pressure another place, trying to find this or that, we've put in one place. And we've pumped out a prediction based on all of these factors. So we tried to simplify it as best we could. But then the beauty of it, if you just scroll down from that hourly detail view, those same breakdowns from the daily summary are there as well. So when you scroll that line through the graph, you'll notice the videos change. So they're pumping out, based on that algorithm, the most important, pertinent videos from Mark and Terry are from top to bottom. So no matter which day it is, different videos will come from top to bottom.
Those videos change as you go through the days, as you slide your bar across for the upcoming days, from what you're telling me. So
they do. We shot like a couple hundred videos. So one for each phase, for each condition. We Mark and Terry shot a video talking about that phase, that condition, and why it's important, and what you can learn from looking at that condition. So again, we're just trying to help people understand the process we go through.
So as I'm looking at the graphs on the top, and I'm looking down further for all the videos, I've got the 13 tactic breakdown 01. So that's the first phase breakdown. You've got time of day. You've got cloud cover, phase 1. And so these videos are not only just breaking down the time of day of the cloud cover, but it's specific to the phase in which you're in the area that you're in. And time of day, barometer overview, if you got wind phase, average temperature phase, cloud cover overview, wind overview, average temperature overview, and a disclaimer. Can I play a couple of these so people listening can understand what they might get?
Sure.
Let me play one here. Let me play the 13 Tactic Breakdown 01.
The new beginning, and all of a sudden you've got high pressure. That's when I get really excited, man. I think this phase, as many as any of the others, high pressure is a big indicator you're going to see deer that day.
Well, it's ironic because when you do see that high pressure, and I'm talking 30.4, 30.3, man, oh man, there's just a ton of deer up on their feet, and particularly, if that pressure coincides with their normal feeding patterns. Conversely, when you see that barometer falling and you see something 29.75 or 29.6, a little bit lower side, it can suppress that movement in a bigger way than some of the other phases.
And it's almost a fine line during this phase, and in a lot of the phases, you might look at 29.95 as a baseline in the Midwest. That's where I see it kind of, when it starts to go above that, I see a little bit better movement. When it starts to drop below that, I see a little worse movement, but that may not be the case in your area, so you have to monitor barometric pressure on a daily basis and look how the deer react to it in your neck of the woods.
And it'd be nice just to start logging it. Sometimes it's fun to try and keep track of how many deer you saw that day and look at the barometer. So if you've got a chance to jot it down or you keep a logbook, it's fun to keep track of it.
And keep this in mind about barometric pressure. It's relative to the time of the year. In other words, high pressure during the early part of the season isn't nearly as high when you get into the winter and you get much higher pressure on a day in, day out basis.
So that's the 13th Tactic Breakdown, kind of the overview of phase 1. And
sure.
That's Mark and Terry talking. And they're quick videos. They're a minute and a half, maybe up to 2 minutes. I'm not sure about all of them. I haven't looked at all of them, but that's pretty, they're easy to understand. They're quick, but you're getting to the points, and it looks like you're really zoned in on exactly what that hunter needs and get it in a short dose quickly.
Yeah, the only video that would be long out of all of those, and it's probably anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes, is the actual tactic, like the phase breakdown. So at the very beginning, the first video we show every phase is the phase breakdown that basically tells you the overview of it.
Okay.
And that's a combination of 4 or 5 years of us doing it on the TV show, all kind of mashed up into one cohesive video. And so that's what that is. But then below that, all of those are 1 minute to 2 minutes, and it's just breaking down the individual condition that we're talking about.
Now, I did notice that not only is this giving information, but it looks like it's collecting data if you want to send it in. Is that something
Correct.
that you guys are monitoring as well?
Yeah, so there's a little in that DeerCast section. So if you were looking at the app and you're at the very bottom and the little hoof print there, you click it, and that's what gets you into the full DeerCast section, the prediction, the weather, all that. So you'll see a little red or orange, depending on how colorblind you are, the orange circle with a little eyeball in the middle of it to the lower right-hand side. If you clicked on that, it's going to say, all right, movement observation. Tell us how the Drury DeerCast matches up against your actual observations of movement in the field. So the actual movement I see today is great, good, okay, poor, bad, and then you can leave a comment. So what happens here, say we told you it was going to be a great day on this app, and it was poor. You click poor here, and then you leave your comments as to why it was poor. You send the observation, and what happens is it takes a snapshot of every weather variable, and it puts it into a database for us too. It's not like Mark and Terry are coming through every single one of them. Like, that's not happening. But what the point of this is that at the end of the season, we create a code that reads all these variables, and maybe it picks up on it's much smarter than we could ever want to be. So maybe it picks up on some sort of condition or variable that happened over and over and over. and it makes us want to tweak our algorithm to reflect that for a certain state, for a certain area, whatever the case may be. So It's not like we're combing through that stuff daily, but the point of it is to, at the end of the season, try to make the app even better and smarter going forward.
That's brilliant. Now there is a disclaimer here. Can I play the disclaimer? Because it's kind of interesting that we think all these variables, and this is a predictor based off of experience for 70-something years combined, but there's still an element of chance and what's unique. And I think these Mark and Terry really describe that it's not the end all be all, and it may not be accurate all the time.
No, I would venture to say it will not be. It's going to be pretty close.
Right.
But we just can't factor in farmers and bird watchers and hikers and dogs running through your property and the access you took to your stand. Like, we can't predict that kind of stuff. What we can predict is based on 70 combined years of experience. Generally speaking, when we feel like they're going to move based on weather conditions.
Right. Can I play the disclaimer here just so everybody
Sure.
can hear that? Okay. So it's loading up here.
Well, welcome to the DeerCast. Our goal within this particular app was obviously entertain you with all the Drury Outdoors content that we could, but we also wanted to provide you with a tool that helped you understand deer movement, at least in as much as we know about deer movement. We really wanted to take everything that was in his head and my head and condense it into one app so that you could listen to it, learn it, and eventually become a better hunter and be a little bit more stealthy or a little bit more accurate in terms of which days they might move a little bit better and which days they might not move nearly as well. Now, this is all based around a weather forecast, so the actual influencers and the DeerCast is only going to be as accurate as the weather forecast that it's based around. So be patient with DeerCast because every hour it's getting updated. Terry, do you want to speak as far as when it might be accurate versus not quite as accurate?
Well, ironically enough, I was watching my phone this morning and watching it change, watching the forecast change. So, trying to take those influencers and turn them into actual deer movement is somewhat tricky because it does change and it alters depending on how the weather's acting that particular day. If you got a big front coming or going, those things can change almost hourly, and we see that often. But whenever it's fairly consistent, you can somewhat do a little bit of a prediction or take those influencers and say they're going to have an impact on deer movement. And years ago, we sat there and didn't realize why they were moving, when they were moving. So we're two very analytical people, and you take 40 or 45, 50 years of deer hunting and you say, you know what, there's a reason those deer are moving, and here's the reasons. Start adding up and stacking up. And that's really about what this is all about. It's about stacking the odds. And that's one of the things that we like to do and always have done is try to stack the odds in your favor. And the weather has been so crucial and so important as far as trying to say, when can I maximize my time in a tree stand and say deer, the odds are much, much higher right now of seeing deer move than not. And that's really what we're trying to predict here.
It's really a tool that helps you become a better hunter because without question, weather is the influencer that makes a deer get up and move, especially during daylight, which if you hear us talk throughout the DeerCast, you're going to learn we're talking mostly about daylight activity and optimizing when you're out there experiencing daylight activity. But again, back to that comment about the weather forecast, if you look at the 10-day DeerCast, it's not going to be nearly as accurate as the 1, 2, or 3-day DeerCast because it's only as accurate as the forecast. And if you watch the weather like we do, you realize that if you look at day 10 right now, well, when you get 8 days later, day 10 is not going to look like it does right now. Weather's just incredibly hard to predict, but DeerCast, it's the only way we can base it is off of the weather forecast, but be patient with it because weather forecasts change. So if you look at, say, November the 6th and it says on October the 26th that November 6th is the day, well, that might change as you get closer to it. So be mindful of that as you watch the DeerCast.
And I think the best way to say it is this is not the final word on saying when deer are going to move or when they're not going to move. What we're just trying to do is give you a tool or give you an aid to kind of predict it and say, you know what, the odds are in my favor. It's going to be a little higher odds today that they're going to move than not. I think I'm going to spend my time, appropriately. I may take off this weekend because we got a big front coming, big cold front approaching, and so on and so forth. So it's really just a tool to try and help you. Influencers are many, and you got to try and take all of those and add them up and say, which ones are the main predictors, and temperature and weather really is the biggest influencer we have.
Absolutely. We looked at 10, 11 different influencers, and our app developers built an algorithm off of our experience with those influencers and how they interact with each other and how they interact with the phase. They then took that algorithm, added it all up, and spit out a little bit of a prediction as far as whether the deer would be moving quite well, so-so, or not so well. So we feel like it's going to help you become a better hunter, especially if you dig a little deeper beyond the initial DeerCast. Look at the DeerCast, then listen to why we feel like a certain influencer might influence the deer movement a little bit more or a little bit less that day. In fact, if I were you, I would go through all of the explanations for all of the weather, day by day, phase by phase, and you'll eventually start to see why we look at certain weather influencers during certain phases and which ones have the most influence and when the deer are going to react to those influences.
Well, they're somewhat weighted, I guess, if you will. We had to weight these influencers because they change as the phases move along or as the phases change. Temperature is always important, but sometimes it's a little less important.
So that is the summary, right, of what this was all about. There's a little bit more to the video, but that is the overview. It's the reason that all this is happening, but that is a disclaimer from that video that you have to really pay attention to everything that's going on. But it also seems like it's going to make you a more effective hunter if you pay attention to it, and make you a more efficient hunter.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of this. We've never been a company that Mark and Terry have always been there and Drury Outdoors there to try to help inform people, whether through our mistakes or through our successes, as to why something happened that happened. So if they failed at something, we show it, and the success we've shown it. So you kind of follow along, and this is just an extension of that, a very high level extension of that. But ultimately, the whole point is to try to help everybody at home become a better hunter that don't have the luxury to spend, 4 months in the stand every day. That's the reality of it, that most people don't. And so, hey, if you can learn something from somebody else, and Mark and Terry still are learning stuff. They learn stuff every day from the Stan Potts of the world and the Lee Lakoskis and there's some really Don Kiskis, Jay Gregory. They're great hunters out there, tons of them. So if you can pick some new tactic up, why not?
Right. Excellent. So what's the future of this app? Do you have some other plans beyond what it is right now?
Yeah, we definitely do. We have a several year outlook here of what we plan on doing with it. There's going to be a tracking series that we create, a high level tracking series where depending on where you hit your deer, like for every different type of hit you can have, like, all right, how long should you leave that deer wait? What kind of blood do you see? What kind of, what tips you should to take into the woods with you to try to recover that animal. So we're working on that for year 2. We're working on trying to implement some basic mapping stuff as well, so that you could set your tree stands, your camera sites, and find out some basic things there. Working with trail camera technology, trying to have something where you can input your photos and maybe it helps pump out a prediction. There's all kinds of different things we're working on. So, that's a outlook 3-5 years, but that there's always going to be things that we're going to be doing to make this better.
Well, I think overall I'm excited about it because it's made my life more efficient in learning where to, trying to go find all the information that's in this app. You've put it all in one place, which makes my life a lot easier trying to predict all this stuff. So I thank you, I guess is what I'm trying to say, for doing that. And
well, we appreciate that, and hopefully people can get something out of this app and use it to kill a deer this fall. That's the whole point of it, and we're already getting messages every day that people are, and it's exciting to see that stuff. So we're very fortunate that it's rolling along as well as it is. But on the same token, we put a lot of effort and time and thought into this thing, and it's not just some we didn't take some half-hearted stroke at trying to put some app out there and it be a money grab of some sort. It's not. It should be a tool. I think that most people, if you're coming in with a non-biased opinion of it, I think you could really gain something out of it. And at the very least, the entertainment side of it is through the roof. There's a lot of cool entertainment factors of this thing. The news feed, every day there's a new journal article that goes up, or a new article. We have a team of writers that we're working with. Our Drury Outdoors team is putting content in there. Like I said, the journal of when one of our team members kills something, that goes in. And then, we have a section called DeerCast Now, where the actual kill goes up, within a day or so. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of content there, even over on the DoD TV section, DeerCast 101. There's a bunch of how-to videos of how to work this app, the stuff that we're going through on the phone. If you didn't have to write this down necessarily, because you can go to the app and see it in the DeerCast Now, or DeerCast 101 section. Tons of great content. Killing the Kitchen. There's so much stuff. Our podcast is in here, the 100% Wild podcast.
Right.
So many things to reasons why once you get there to stay there in all reality. So hopefully people can enjoy it and take it for what it is and give us some good feedback or bad or whatever. We want to keep improving it.
So after they've listened to this much of the show, where can they go and get this app? I think we mentioned it's on the Apple format and the Android, but where do they go inside of those?
So the easiest way is just to go to if you're an Android user, go to the Google Play Store and search DeerCast. One word, DeerCast. Same thing in the iTunes Apple Store, the App Store. Just search DeerCast. If you can't remember that, you could always go to DeerCast.com, and there will be it'll take you over to DruryOutdoors.com, actually, but DeerCast.com is easy to remember. And from there are, it says get it on Google Play or download it on the App Store, and you click the one that's appropriate for your phone, and it'll take you right there to the App Store, right to the page you need to be in. And if you would, if it's been a great experience, please, by all means, leave us a good rating and your comment or feedback there in the App Stores, and let us know what you think. And it's been pretty cool from our perspective to see the early adoption of it. It's been really, really cool.
Very nice. And if we've left more questions for people than answers, or if they want more information, where are you guys located? Website, social media, Facebook, Twitter,
Sure.
YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff.
So if you want to follow anything that we're doing, you can always start at DruryOutdoors.com, DRURY Outdoors.com. DeerCast.com takes you to this specific page that I was talking about, and there's a video on there. It was actually a podcast that we did with Mark and Terry, and they get pretty in-depth and detailed as to the thought process behind everything. And then, of course, you can follow us on social media at Drury Outdoors. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, it's just at Drury Outdoors across the board. You'll be able to find us. And we're constantly talking about giving updates on the season and so forth. But DeerCast.com is probably your easiest way to find out more about the specific app.
Gotcha. And
I do want to mention one more thing.
Absolutely,
it is free for this year.
I was just going to ask you, is it free? And I think I had read somewhere that it was free for 1 year, and then you'll have some kind of a pay as you go structure.
So, and we went back and forth on this, but we wanted everybody to give it a try. See what you think about it. And I know there's going to be a big percentage of people that say, I'm never going to pay for an app. It's probably 60% of people will never pay for an app. We know that. We understand that, and that's all right. But we want you guys to give it instead of a 7-day free trial or a month free trial. We're just saying, hey, test it out all season long here. Let us know what you think about it. Hopefully you find a value in it. Hopefully it helped you in some way. And next year in 2019, there will be a paid version of this app. We haven't nailed it down exactly yet. Likely will be a yearly subscription. and there will be probably different levels. So there'll probably be a free version of the app where the content, the news feed, and certain weather variables will still be there. And then there'll be the paid version where you can get the DeerCast prediction. You can get the kills as they happen this fall. You can get our old library. If we end up adding mapping, those types of things will be in the paid version, which is pretty standard. That's pretty standard for apps out there. But I'll say this, we would love to make it free forever, but this thing is pretty costly as far as a company is concerned. It's a pretty costly venture. We have to pay, the weather services, and we have to pay the app company to continue to make this thing accurate and develop.
Right.
And so we gotta at the very least recoup our costs. And so in year one here, we're just kind of taking it on the chin and want to put it out there and hopefully get as many people to try it out and see what they think. And then year two, we'll go from there. But yeah, it's absolutely free for this fall.
Well, it makes sense. And I used to be one of those guys that said, hunting is a pure element. I will never pay for any kind of technology, and I'll never use anything beyond just my scouting abilities. And here I am using GPS, Garmin's, using my phone to predict movement or doing my best until your stuff came along. Now I'm using your app, and I'm using mapping apps to know where my sign is, where my tree stands are. So, and I'm paying for some of this stuff now. And I am somebody that I thought would never do that. Here I am.
Sure. It goes back to what can help you be a better hunter. Some guys are just like, you just got to go in there. I got to sit there and I can see it myself. That's great. That's cool too. There's never a bad day spent outdoors. Never.
Correct. Right.
Some people just don't have the luxury of the time spent, and whether they're busy with families or work or whatever, and they want to know when their best odds are. And this absolutely can help pinpoint that for you. Yep.
I just love that you've put it all in one spot with all kinds of knowledge and videos and predictions. It's just so far, and I've only been using it a week, but man, I love it so far. And I've told all my friends about it, and they're checking it out. And I think it's going to go even further than it is, because it's you guys are always right on the cutting edge of the technology piece, and I think you nailed it.
Well, we hope so, and we know that, now that it's out there, I guarantee you there's 3 or 4 companies out there trying to knock it off, and that's okay too. I mean, that's just part of it.
Right.
And, we always try to be out there on the cutting edge, and we'll continue to strive to make this thing even better. And we'll always try to do that. But the one thing that other companies can't have would be that algorithm, that 70 combined years of sitting there and know exactly the weighting system. You just can't duplicate it. And so, if I wanted to become the best, whatever it may be, I'm going to go try to find somebody that does it every single day, an expert, so to speak, and suck up as much knowledge as I can from.
Right. And whenever I try something new, I always say, is this a gimmick or is this useful? And this heavily falls in the useful category to me, especially because you guys put it out there for free for 1 year. You're saying, okay, go use it. Here's the proof. Give it a shot.
Beat it up. Let us know.
Right. Beat it up.
We want it to be the best it can be.
That's awesome. And Matt, this has been a pleasure. And you're always welcome back on the show. You bring so much information and knowledge. I think this DeerCast app is excellent. So if people had direct questions for you after, where can they reach you?
I believe we have an email address set up for DeerCast. It's DeerCastSupport@DruryOutdoors.com. Of course, you can go to our website and leave a comment through there, or on social media. We answer all that stuff, all the private messages that come in. We try to answer everything we can. And so you can always try to find us there. So hopefully, and by the way, we've been getting a ton of great feedback from people of things that would improve that, things that we could add to that. And so we love to hear all that as well and take it into consideration. And hopefully in the years to come, we'll be able to come out and implement some of that stuff.
Well, thanks to Matt Drury for coming on board and coming back to the show to talk about the DeerCast app. That's part 1 of our exploration of hunting tech as our world has evolved into lots of different kinds of technology, and it's here to stay. So thought we'd explore some of the more recent advancements, and stay tuned for part 2, where we explore the adventure cameras with Tactacam. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Well, we do, Jay. You know, I'm going to touch bases on ground blinds.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
You know, it's a great option to get out of the elements of the weather, and it's sometimes they're just not a tree where you want to be hunting at. And if you're going to set up a ground blind, get that thing in the woods. Give them a chance to adjust to it. You know, it's going to be a foreign object. They say, oh, you brush it in, and I'm not going to say you can't get lucky and go set up a ground blind, brush it in good, and that night kill the buck or a doe or whatever you're hunting. But you know, just 9 out of 10 times they're going to come out and maybe spook a little bit when they see that ground blind, or maybe a little bit of scent that you've left in there, or just something that's not going to be right to either visually or to their taste buds or their nose. Or just give that ground blind time to season in that spot. If you're planning on hunting it pretty heavy, get it out there, get it set up, and let it become part of the element that they're used to.
Very nice. It's yeah, you notice when you open up a package of anything, no matter what it is. I hate that plastic packaging that everything comes in now. You basically have to take out your knife and you have to cut that through layers of plastic just to get to the item that you first ordered. It drives me nuts. But once you get in there, everything smells like a factory. You know, it's all the synthetic stuff that was used during manufacturing. And guaranteed deer smell that. So I'm with you, man. Just you got to get that kind of seasoned up to match the outdoors.
Yeah, no doubt. And it just gives it opportunity to get the deer comfortable, you know, walking in front of it or passing by it or being around it, whatever the scenario may be. Just if you let it season for a couple weeks before you hunt it,
right?
Well, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and I think it's seasoned in a couple different ways. Like I left my blind out all spring and all summer, and not in the place where I was hunting, but I just want to get all the smells out. And then I think you're right. Having it placed in a spot for a couple of weeks so the deer get used to it is just smart. Just good move.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So great tip. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.